What's going on, guys? It's Chad back over here on some more Modern Warfare 2, the original. Real quick, we ended up getting some actual decent sounding news. I mean, it might not be as good sounding as I'm hoping it is. Maybe this is just some pure hopium here, but I mean, who am I kidding? It is literally completely driven by my feeling of hope. I says Jev? Nope, it's Power Duck. You know, somebody that just happened to name themselves Power Duck and is almost in first place now. Could it ever just be a good player named Power Duck? I think I'm decent. Yeah, so we've been talking about leaks for like the past, I don't even know, 4 or 5 days at this point. Just so much information is coming out and gameplay details and all sorts of shit, and we've been talking about them. Obviously, we've been trying to take all of them with a grain of salt, but also trying to build ideas off of them, which, by the way, thank you guys so much for subscribing if you're new here. Gotten a good amount of people that have been leaving comments and stuff on the videos recently, so I appreciate it. Never heard of it. Oh man, the chat. Oh god. Buy me McDonald's, I'm hungry. Get it through DoorDash. Well, today we actually have another leak, but it's not necessarily directly related to the gameplay. It's more like infrastructure. But as you guys know, ever since Modern Warfare 2019, skill-based matchmaking has been something that was largely contested, talked about, studied, tested, all sorts of other shit, where we were trying to prove that it actually existed. On top of like looking through interviews and all this other shit, we basically got confirmation that there is some system in place that separates people based on stats and accuracy and all sorts of other things like that, which we call skill-based matchmaking. Now the thing is, that's normally a thing in other games, but there's usually a rank connected to it. But in Call of Duty, it's not really showing anything. There's really no rank that actually represents your actual skill level. Biggest form of recognition of like whether somebody is good or not, we'll never really know from the outside. You just have to end up playing against them to, I guess, kind of see, and then see, you know, in what situations do they perform and all this other shit. So it's just weird. Obviously, you can try to go pro, you can play GBs and all this other shit, but there is no like tried and true, just simple information in front of us as players, for us players, to let us know where we actually stand in the world, other than like total kills, total wins, total like highest KD, some other stuff like that. I gotta make a marathon class. Dude, I swear, I was not the best marathon sniper, but it felt so good to marathon snipe. Now, we have learned over this time that basically skill-based matchmaking has always existed, but because of the way that disbanding lobbies counts and work, disbanding lobbies is the way that they kind of get the entire system to work. There was this other thing, engagement-based matchmaking, where basically the system was put in place to try to get people to play longer within the server or game mode. And the thing is, apparently this system has always worked this way, because if you made a new account back on the original Modern Warfare 2, for example, you would definitely get into easier lobbies. That was a known thing, but it wouldn't last that long, because once you started dominating those lobbies, the game would start putting you into not new player lobby. It seems to be that there's actually a difference between a player that has 10,000 kills, that has time played, versus a player that doesn't have any time played, even if their stats were equally as horrible. So if you have a player that's brand new and has only played 5 games and their KD is a 0.2, and there's a guy that has played 1,000 games or some shit like that and he has a 0.2, that does not mean necessarily they're going to be put in the same bracket. There is like a protected new player bracket that has always existed, but this system got tuned, it got, you know, refined and everything like that to try to get their, you know, matchmaking to work the way that they're intending it to try to protect, you know, worse players and stuff like that, so they don't end up, you know, getting their asses whooped and then ultimately just quitting the game, saying that it sucks and all this other shit. Because ultimately, nobody has any fun getting dominated, right? Even the good players that have played consistently over the years, they don't want to play against all good players all the time. And that was kind of the beauty of the old system, where you would be able to kind of pick and choose your battles. You would be able to pick and choose whether or not you stayed in a lobby with bad players or good players. If they were really good, you could back out if you didn't want to play against them anymore. If they were really bad and they decided to stay in the lobby, you could stay in the lobby too and continue to dominate them. They have the choice to leave. They're not stuck here. And that was just kind of an agreed on thing. It was just kind of how it was. But it changed over the years. So ever since 2019, it's definitely been more strict, and it definitely makes that whole kind of thing more difficult, because they ended up introducing disbanding lobbies. Disbanding lobbies basically just means that every single game, at the end of them, it will just break everybody out of that system, that certain lobby, that particular game. It's not gonna sit there and go through a map vote and all that shit like it used to. It will just break everybody back up again and then match everybody back together. Now, it is a possibility that you can just join other people back. That is a possibility, but it's very, very unlikely that the same exact lobby with the same exact players will stay intact anymore. So people have complained about skill-based matchmaking because it basically, the better you get at the game, it's hard to tell, number one, how much better you're getting other than staring at your overall KD, which is just not really a true measurement of how good somebody actually is. in terms of how they perform. Holy fuck, second place only had 30 points. Regardless, anyway, people understand skill-based matchmaking. But Ralph's Valve, pretty well-known leaker at this point, who has been pretty accurate on all the things that he's leaked. He ended up putting an article out that he apparently ended up getting some sort of update on what they're going to be doing with their skill-based matchmaking system. And here's the thing. I pretty much gave up on that whole fight against skill-based matchmaking. If you were here during Modern Warfare 2019, shit, Cold War, shit, even the grind of Vanguard, because you especially feel the skill-based matchmaking when you really grind the game at the start of it, where there's tons of people, everybody's trying to make progress, everybody's trying to learn the maps, the mechanics, they're using all the cheesiest shit that they can possibly find. We've been through so many metas. You guys remember the 725? That's just one of them. That's one of the most well-known ones. The 725, you can put that shit in your title back then, and it's guaranteed views. Everybody looked at the 725, everybody hated the 725, people were crying and complaining, saying they were going to quit the game because of the 725. It's just one of the, you know, metas that we had in terms of, you know, multiplayer and shit. And apparently there is some sort of update to the skill-based matchmaking system because they are seeing a big decrease in players. With Vanguard and everything, they're thinking that skill-based matchmaking could also be playing a part in people's enjoyment being lost, you know, over time. Because obviously, if they're, you know, running engagement-based matchmaking where it's basically trying to encourage a player to stay on as long as possible, hey, if they're doing bad, they're not doing that well, let's put them into, you know, a little bit of an easier lobby so they have a good game and they have a good feeling, so they'll want to keep coming back and playing. Issue is that if you're a good player that is, you know, a consistent player, you're going to eventually get into lobbies with other very consistent players, and it's groups of consistent players, full stacks, full squads and shit like that. So we know that the system basically just works based on, you know, recent games and overall stats, some combination of them, some formula. And then if you end up in a certain ballpark range within stats and recent stats and things like that, those are the people that you'll get matched into. There could be a below average player that actually manages to do well for 1 or 2 games in a row, and then immediately they're just thrown into this horribly mismatched game where the game thinks they're much better than they actually are, and matchmaking just isn't as consistent as they pretend it is. Can anyone host me a 10th lobby? 1600 Microsoft points. Oh, those were the days. The amount of Microsoft points scams that were going around in people's like message to all. Anyway, to Ralph's article, it says skill-based matchmaking has become a hotbed of discussion over the last few years. This is the article, by the way. It continues to be a source of concern amongst fans in the franchise. Activision since sought out an improvement to the SBMM framework, assigning a subsidiary studio. They have an entire separate studio now. So, hey, any skill-based matchmaking issues we have, we're looking at you, Demonware. The next time I drop 100 kills on some players that also dropped near 100 kills, and then you decide to match me up with fucking Optic Gaming, I'm gonna be looking right at you guys, because that's not a fair trade. That's not the same fucking thing. It says, complicated but pragmatic. We are always looking for ways to improve every facet that contributes to the product's success. That's the initiative. SBMM is one of those things, as it's really a matter of trial and error. If you think of SBMM, basically like we have an imaginary rank of some sort, like overall, what does our KD count for? What does our recent performance count for? What do kills count for? Does a death actually affect it at all? Does having no deaths inflate anything? There's just so many variables that are possible within this system that we don't even know about, that even apparently according to them, as a trial and error thing, it's not even fully understood by them. SBMM plays an important role in sustaining and thriving a player base. And with Vanguard failing to meet expectations, yep, that's definitely a factor, Activision has had the chance of wiping the slate clean and reviewing the system in place, a collective research and development effort from several studios contributing towards creating a liberal yet sensible system. Oh yeah, and there is a UFC tonight. I'm picking Holly Holm over Ketlin Vieira. I don't think Ketlin's ready. Ketlin's good, but Holly is... she's very, very good. I mean, unless Ketlin somehow manages to wrestle and grapple with her consistently, but I don't see how. If Holly saw that in the tape and shit like that, like she thinks that it could be a problem, she definitely would have prepared for it anyway. I just think Holly is... she's still better than a lot of the division. Holy fuck. So what that sounds like when they're saying liberal yet sensible system, it's, to me, sounding like they're gonna make it maybe less strict, a little bit more loose guidelines of things. I don't know. This guy's talking about using Marathon. Yeah, Marathon, obviously you can't ADS as fast as Sleight of Hand Pro, but it also had a bit more consistency to it. It ADS is slow as shit, but you can consistently hit your shots better and better. Because your ADS is a bit slower, it's a lot less rushed and a bit more calculated. People that were very, very good marathon snipers where they shot just a smidge slower were insanely accurate. Very, very good. You would always want those guys in competitive sniping for like CTF and shit. A good marathon player that would run the flag. Obviously, you can still run it with sleight of hand. It's not like you can't, but there were some people that were very fucking good. An associate briefly mentioned that the new framework would become less debilitating for the better margin of players, instead of penalizing them, whilst allowing for protected bracket to coexist for lower skilled players. So yeah, that basically expands on it further. If Ketlin Vieira manages to actually outstrike Holly Holm, I'll be very, very impressed. But just reads as, hey, once you get up into the higher brackets of player with a, you know, a higher score per minute and other shit like that, it's gonna be less strict apparently. I guess that basically means like they probably won't have as many separated tiers that they break people down into. It'll kind of be this thing where there's still the lower brackets and stuff, but they're a bit wider. So still a system in place to protect the lower players, but also just don't punish the ever-living shit out of, you know, people for just performing well. That literally goes against their idea of continuing their engagement. You would think, you know, in theory that, oh, if somebody does well, they're better than the people that they played against, but that's not always the case. That's just one game, or 2 games, or 3 games, or 4 games. We don't know necessarily where that person falls, also because disbanding lobbies are here to stay. Now, obviously, I've kind of accepted the fact that disbanding lobbies are here to stay. You know, they've also, you know, confirmed here with a complete, clean slate, you know, as a quote. Had the opportunity to look at disbanding lobbies, and they said that disbanding lobbies, if they got rid of that whole, like, function, the entire system would collapse on itself. Which makes a lot of sense because it needs to keep reshuffling the deck and placing things down, because otherwise the players still manipulate the skill-based matchmaking because they would just stay in a lobby that they're dominating. I get that. So it's staying. I don't like it, but it is staying. I get it. It also says matching bot pools. With the breakdown of SBMM's system, there are alleged plans to incorporate bot pools, PvP VE. So basically that means it'll be basically lower tier players, but half of the players aren't even real players. Some of them are bots. Now, I could totally see people abusing the ever-living shit out of this. Absolutely can. That's the one thing about the skill-based matchmaking system that we've all talked about and torn apart a million different ways. There's no perfect system. But basically, the more strict the system is, the easier it actually is to manipulate the system in a certain way to really target the worst of the worst players. I would like to play around the average player. Even though I'm above average, I would like to play against, you know, the average type of player. I don't want to play against the absolute worst all the time, but I'd like a good mix of them, you know, like 1 or 2 players to watch out for on the other team that I know absolutely can kill me and are capable of killing me. The average player is capable of killing anybody on the game. I don't want the actual handicap lobbies. That is a protected skill bracket as it should be. Oh man, I'm trying to trick shot last. Don't do that. Yeah, they're not gonna let me trick shot. Yeah, I might as well read the article. I'm not even gonna win the game. The overhaul in AI, they'll be able to track a player's level of skill throughout a match, leveling and countering smurfs, or outright removing a player from the match. And they can straight up remove somebody for doing too well. Holy shit. Keeps fucking killing me. Why? Why are you the way that you are? You see me going up there. Why? An associate asserted that this particular system would cater to a specific subsection of players in mind. The handicap. Yeah, see, exactly. One of many accessibility options to be introduced, ensuring that as many fans as possible have a chance at experiencing something that may have previously been unplayable to them. Yeah, exactly. Accessibility is massive. More people that can play, the better. Disbanding lobbies are supposedly here to stay, and associate emphasized its apparent importance in structuring the SBMM as a foundation. Plainly stating, if that were to be removed, it would collapse. It wouldn't make sense for the system because people would be able to just control every lobby that they stayed in. Now, obviously, it's technically still possible right now. It is, with an even stricter system, but apparently, yeah, skill-based matchmaking is apparently gonna get toned down a little bit. Now, obviously, this sounds good, sounds like good news, but we're gonna have to kind of hold ourselves on this one because we're not gonna really know until we get in it, and especially once everybody starts doing the camo grind as soon as the game comes out, whatever the grind is like, right? They could have reworked how they do the camos. They could have not. Who knows? As many systems overhauls as they're doing with all these studios working on it and shit like that, with all the feedback they've had over the years and with them taking the extra time to work on the game, we have no idea what we could be getting with this game in terms of systems. It could be a copy-paste of Modern Warfare with just some tweaks and shit like that, or it could be something completely different. But if skill-based matchmaking is less strict, I'm down. I would assume a system that they worked very, very hard on would likely be across all three of the, you know, things that they're going to be working on here. DMZ, Warzone 2, and multiplayer. Because that's the case currently right now. It's split like that in multiplayer and Warzone right now. The system always seems similar, where absolutely if you're a better player, you do get into better lobbies. Every once in a while, the system kind of goofs and, you know, lets you into a, you know, lobby one way or the other. It's not the strictest system in the world, but no system's really perfect, so. Yeah, so skill-based matchmaking, hopefully will be better. Hopefully won't get abused very badly, and, hopefully we can all enjoy the camo grind and just multiplayer in general for like the 5 or 6 months that we'll be playing before Warzone 2 comes out. We also, a lot of people might be playing a shit ton of DMZ. Who knows? I think DMZ has an opportunity within the first, you know, 5 months of the game. If DMZ releases with Modern Warfare 2, and then we have about 5 months until Warzone 2. At 5 months, DMZ has a big, and I mean a big opportunity to actually get off the ground. Then I'm gonna assume that's where they'll decide whether or not they need to put their resources into actually bolstering this game mode, because it is a huge possibility and a huge chance for them to actually create another mode that could potentially also have its own dedicated player base. But the issue is that they need the people to be able to work on all of them simultaneously. We cannot have this thing where all of the things are just funneled in there for Warzone. They need to all be this thing of they're interconnected, they're all connected to each other, but they all need to be equally valuable. You cannot leave DMZ in the dust if they want it to actually succeed. I really do want it to work. It sounds fun.